Hey, yo everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing DC Universe Presents issue number 6, featuring the Challengers of the Unknown. Take a look at this comic cover right here. Now, when the DC relaunch first was announced and they showed the previews for the DC Universe Presents, I said that I was going to pick it up when I saw it was going to be interesting. Nothing against Deadman, because I actually like Deadman, and I think he's a cool character. But I really didn't need another Deadman story in my collection. I was reading Justice League Dark. He was going to be a member of Justice League Dark. I really didn't need to pick up DC Universe Presents. And I believe, and I could be wrong because I didn't read the story, that it was going to be a retelling of his origin, which I know his origin, so I'm okay with not reading that. Again, I like Deadman, but I already get my Deadman in Justice League Dark. So, now we come to issue number 6, and we are dealing with the Challengers of the Unknown. Now, for those of you that don't know who the Challengers of the Unknown are, let's take a little history lesson. The Challengers of the Unknown is a really old comic done by DC that is a pure adventure comic. It's not superpowered humans or crime-fighting vigilantes. It is a group of explorers going around and doing exactly as the title says. Challenge the unknown. What a novel idea! Anyways, the best way to describe their comic is think about Doctor Who, only on a team. It is these challenges going off and dealing with the most outrageous, over-the-top sci-fi and fantasy stories you can ever think of. And it really kind of actually worked well with what the Silver Age was, which was over-the-top and sci-fi. That is the beauty of the Challengers of the Unknown. They're all about the over-the-topness and the adventure aspect. And I'm a sucker for a good adventure story. I may like my Wonder Womans, my Superman, and Batmans that kick butt and take names, especially when there's not that many names to take and all they can do is kick some butt. But I like a good adventure story with some normal, ordinary humans. So now that we have the relaunch and a chance to give a new spin on some old comics, we get to see what the new Challengers of the Unknown are about. Now, the basic story is this. It starts off with a bunch of D-list celebrities going on a TV adventure. Think of it as like what is it called? The Amazing Race or Survivor. Only it's called the Challengers. And basically what they do is they go on the ship and they have to go climb a mountain or do something that deals with the mountain, but tragedy strikes when their ship is actually crashes into a mountain itself. That kind of sucks. And all but one of the challengers survive. Then they go through a bunch of miscellaneous adventure stuff, and they go to a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, which actually I believe is the same monastery that Deadman is from. I could be wrong. I mean, someone please correct me if that if I am wrong. And then they get warped back to the plane, and there's a bunch of back and forth with this team. So the questions are this. Are these Challengers of the Unknown really ready to challenge the unknown? And at the end of the day, will what they challenge take one of their own? Well, just going to have to read and see. So let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Good. I like this modernizing take on the Challenges of the Unknown. It kind of, it's not like there's some kind of super scientific team that has come together to challenge science and fantasy and mysticism and space and the final frontier. No, these are some average Joes that all get caught into a circumstance. I mean, average Joes, they're normal human beings. They're celebrities, but they're average Joes who get sucked into these precarious predicaments and they have to find their way out. It actually makes it easier for me to put myself in their position because they don't have any special talents or special powers that can get them out of these situations. It is as if you, myself, Bob down the street, and maybe Stacy over in the convenience store were stuck on a plane and crash land, and we were to survive. So it's kind of cool that we get this average Joe sense. 2 is you learn some of the characters' names pretty quickly, in particular June, who is kind of the big character of this book. She is the blonde-haired woman on the cover. Her big story throughout this book is she's looking for her lover. I don't know if he's quite her boyfriend or her husband, but she's looking for him, who was part of the crash but disappeared. A few people disappear in this comic, and a few people die in this comic. So I'm not spoiling anything on who it is, but some people do disappear. So her character is developed pretty nicely, and you get to know the names of the characters pretty well. And like I said, it's a fast-paced action story, adventure story. You're constantly on the move. We never stay in one place at once, and even when we're at like the monastery, we're not really staying there for too long. We're moving back to the crash site, then we get attacked by a monster. Blah blah blah. It's just a constant, fast pace, which is also very good. Bad. Well, with the exception of June and then Ace and maybe one other character, you really don't get to learn much about the other characters. You get basic things. You may learn their names, which are easy to pick up on. But, like I said, the only really developed character is June. And, actually, I forget his name. Escapes me. The guy with the medallion. Other than that, everyone, they don't really develop that much. Two is that although this aims for sci-fi and for mysticism, I feel as though it's a little bit more on the mysticism aspect than sci-fi aspect. There's nothing wrong with that, because again, I like adventure stories. But it would have been nice if they were a little bit more sci-fi stories to start off with, because when I think of Challenges of the Unknown, I think of sci-fi kind of things. I don't think of fantasy things, but the fantasy things can still work too. And to be fair, you can attribute a lot of sci-fi stuff to this. Next is the art. While the art isn't that bad, something just, I don't know, there's something that feels off about the faces that are done with the art. And lastly, the dialogue. The dialogue isn't bad by any stretch, but there are a few moments that feel a little unnatural. For example, there's a guy with a camcorder going around and taking pictures of everyone and trying to post it on his Twitter, although it's not called Twitter on this, probably because of copyright infringement shit. And he says, well, these are a bunch of boring breasts. And then one of the girls goes, you can look at these really interesting breasts right here. Who in their right mind says that? Well, actually, I know a few people that might, but still, really. And then he walks into the cockpit with his camera. Who allows a random passenger into the cockpit? Anyways, putting that aside whether or not you should get it. Challenges of the Unknown starts off on a decent step. It isn't the perfect start for the Challenges of the Unknown, but it is an interesting new take to them. If I had to give this score, I'd probably give it 3 to 3.5 out of 5. The great thing about this is that it's pure adventure, and it's something that you can lose yourself in. And more so over, if you're picking this up, it's probably only going to be around for maybe 4 or 5 issues. So I would actually recommend picking it up and getting something to cut yourself away from the modern DCU, like with Wonder Woman and Supergirl and Flash and Green Lantern, something that is completely different and something that's a little bit easier to put yourself into, because like I said, these aren't superheroes, they're not mass vigilante crime fighters, they're average day Joes, and they are stuck in a precarious predicament. So, in saying that, although there's a few bumps along the way, Challenges of the Unknown for DC Universe Presents issue number 6 was a good start. So I do recommend picking it up for those comic book enthusiasts. That's I'm going to end this video here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.